I also kind of follow this method called the prime method for finding my tenants. So I want to, P stands for placement of advertisements. So you want to place your ads where your target tenant is hanging out.
Where are you investing in, man? Like, I know that you said that you look for top tier schools. Are they all in one area or are they in different markets?
Yes, they're in like Sacramento and Stockton. So I actually invest at a Sac State area. CSU Sacramento, and I also invest near University of the Pacific. So that's where my rentals are located. I always try to buy within like a 5-minute walk or a 5-minute drive to campus.
Hi, everybody. This is Jose Luis Morales. Welcome back to the Residual Real Estate Agent Show. Today, we've got a very special guest. His name is Ryan Chaw. He is an investor and he is based out of Sacramento, California. Today, he is going to be talking to us about student rentals, renting by the room, and creative financing. Welcome to the show, Ryan. How are you?
It's an honor to be on the show, and I'm doing great.
That's awesome, man. Good. So for the viewers that don't know who you are, would you mind telling them who Ryan Chaw is and how did you get involved in real estate investing?
Yeah, so I was actually inspired by my grandpa to get into real estate investing. He bought a couple properties in the San Francisco Bay Area back in the 50s when they were dirt cheap. So as we all know, the real estate market there boomed and the rents went up, and he was able to not only cover his basic living expenses, but also able to help pay for part of my college tuition and my brother's college tuition as well. So I realized that real estate is one of the best ways to create generational wealth. So I wanted to get started as soon as possible. Soon after I graduated, I actually worked 2 jobs, worked a lot of overtime to try to save up as much capital as I can to buy as many properties as I could. But I later realized that I didn't have to do that. There's more creative ways to buy real estate. But anyways, I basically bought 1 property per year, a simple formula, and I invested in a local college town, and rented out by the bedroom to basically double my cash flow that I could be getting on the house. So a lot of my rental income per house is around $2,500 to $3,400 per month, versus normally you would only be able to get about $1,000 to $1,500 per month on those houses. So, I stumbled upon this niche and I was able to reinvest that cash flow to help me scale to portfolio 6 single family homes right now. That's making $17,580 in rental income.
Congratulations, man. 28 years old with 6 properties.
That's right. Yep.
How old were you when you bought your first one?
I was 23. Believe 23 or 24. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Same. I was 23 when I bought my first one as well too. It's a good
awesome
age to get started. That's awesome. So it's interesting that you say that your grandfather was almost like the catalyst for the family and you got to see what he was doing. That happened very similar to me where my parents invested in real estate and I saw them. So I got started early as well too. But then I realized that some of the stuff that they were doing, there was different ways of doing it. Meaning like there was ways like the Burr method where you get to refinance your money out. There's things like house hacking. There's just a bunch of different strategies. And even though they did well, the information that they had was very simple. And a little bit limited. So tell us the story of how you bought your first property. What did that look like? What were the numbers? And what year was it as well, too, in the marketplace?
Yeah, so this was year 2016 when I bought my first property. I bought it for $262,000. And then I was able to put in a 4th bedroom because it was a pretty spacious house. It was a 3-bed, 2-bath, but it was spacious enough to put in that 4th bedroom. So once I put in that 4th bedroom, I was able to make about $2,500 per month in rental income on that property. So it basically met the 1% rule. And then from there, actually, I kind of just waited and then let the equity build up on that property. Eventually, it reached the point where it was like $100,000, actually, it's $162,000 in equity right now. I think at the time I took out something called a HELOC, which is a home equity line of credit, which allows you to leverage the equity you built on that property to buy more properties. Essentially, you take out the money kind of like as a credit card debt, And then you can use that towards a down payment on future properties. So I actually bought my fourth and fifth property using the HELOC method. And that accelerated my, scaling and my growth. The other thing I did is, of course, where I could add extra bedrooms, I did, because every extra bedroom I added was an extra $600 or $700 in rental income. So if I could add like 2 bedrooms, that would be an extra $1,400 per month. And then I used that and reinvested that to buy my next property that much faster.
Did you end up moving into the first property as well too, or did you end up
No,
renting?
that was an investment property, but the one that I'm in currently, the sixth property I'm in currently, is a house hack. So
Okay.
if you house hack, you can actually put as low as like a 3.5% down payment and basically finance the rest of it. And so the house hack that I'm currently living in, the mortgage is about $2,300 per month, and I'm making $3,650 in rental income per month. And I'm also living in it as well. So if I move out and rent out this master bedroom for about 900, that would be more like 4,500 in rental income.
And was your first property, I know that you added a fourth bedroom. Did you end up renting that out to one family, or did you end up doing kind of like not a house hack, but ended up renting it out by the room?
By the room as well. Yeah, if I rented it out as a whole family, it would be at max about $1,500 per month in rent at the time. Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like the reason you did that was just to have additional cash flow. Basically.
Additional cash flow, but I also saw my friend kind of did this during college, and I was like, hey, that it seems to be working for him. Why don't I get into it, right? So I just kind of copied that model, and then over the years I developed some systems and processes to make sure that this is a well-oiled machine, and so that my 6 rentals are kind of just running on their own.
That's awesome, brother. And then how do you find your tenants, and who is your tenant base, like in terms of like your ideal tenant? Is it like college students? Is it just single nurses doing nursing jobs?
I primarily look for kind of like high quality college students. So I invest in colleges that are usually on the top colleges lists. Like you have to have a pretty high SAT score to get into this college. So most people that I bring into my house are usually very talented. They, are very serious about studying and getting their degree. A lot of times I target schools that have like pharmacy, dentistry, medical school type students as well, and try to bring in those types of graduate students whenever possible. I also kind of follow this method called the PRIME method for finding my tenants. So I want to, P stands for placement of advertisements. So you want to place your ads where your target tenant is hanging out. So you have to think about, okay, where are the high quality, college students going to be hanging out? So a lot of times there's like the Facebook groups dedicated towards these colleges, like pharmacy class of 2025, right? So I might put up my ad there. Maybe school bulletin boards, right? At the pharmacy school, I'll put my ads up there. So that's the P. The R stands for reviewing social media. So once I get somebody interested contacting me about my place, I'll go ahead and take a look at their Facebook, Instagram, whatever's out there, LinkedIn maybe, and kind of look for things like smoking, drugs, alcohol. Are they going to a lot of raves? Are they like the party type of tenant, And then I stands for identifying the type of tenant. So is this somebody who's like, when you're talking with them, are they asking for like cheaper rents and asking, for like to get like the best deal that they can get, or are they difficult to communicate with, or do they get angry easily? Those types of things. And basically, I identify kind of what type of quality tenant is from how they're communicating with me. M stands for measuring responsiveness. So the more responsive they are, usually the more responsible they are as a tenant. And then E stands for ensuring proof of income. So I get like bank statements and a FICO score, just a screenshot of the FICO score to see like, okay, can they afford the rent? What does, it's usually the parents actually paying the rent rather than the students. So you're never going to have to deal with like unpaid rent, because what parent is going to want to have their kid, evicted from the place that they're staying at college, right? So that's pretty much the PRIME method, and that's how I find my high quality tenants.
Is it PRIME with an M, like prime?
Yeah, PRIME.
That's
as
awesome.
In prime tenants. Yeah.
Is this something that you came up with, or is this something that you found somewhere? Because I've never heard of it, to be honest.
No, yeah, no, I
frankly,
came
it's
up with
brilliant.
the acronym. It's it's something to make it easier for people to remember.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it's funny. Like when I got my first rental property, our ideal demographic wasn't college students. It was actually agricultural workers in our area.
Oh,
There's a
nice.
huge demand for housing, affordable housing for them.
Hmm.
And they couldn't go through your traditional methods. But we would do something similar with the P in terms of placement. We identified where they would be hanging out. A lot of them would be hanging out at laundromats because they had to wash their clothes, and we would actually place ads at the laundromat.
Oh,
So it's
that's smart.
interesting that you guys would do it that way because it's a good way of finding your ideal tenant. I love the prime acronym, by the way.
Yeah.
Cool. So you find your ideal tenant. What are some of the issues that you guys run into? So I've never done by the room, and the
Hmm.
reason I've never done by the room, I imagine, and this could be in my head, that it's more management intensive. And the reason is that if obviously people are sharing a kitchen, in some cases bathrooms, you run into issues. It sounds like you've got a pretty good screening process, which
Hmm.
helps and makes it easier. But what are some of the issues that maybe you've run into by doing this strategy?
Yeah, so first I would say you want to try to pair up your tenants so they're kind of in the similar majors or similar interests. So what I would do is I would have like a pharmacy schoolhouse, right? So they're all taking the same pharmacy school classes, they study together, all that type of stuff. And I'll have like an engineering schoolhouse, you know? So basically I kind of try to pair them up so it's kind of they jive together very well. With that being said, I would say once a year or so, I'll still have like a tenant versus tenant conflict. A tenant complains about the other guy being too messy, not doing his dishes, that type of stuff, right? And what I found works best is actually empowering the tenants to solve these issues. So walking them through the process, what I'll do is say, hey, why don't you go, like the person who's complaining about the other guy, right? I'll tell him, hey, why don't you talk to that guy one-on-one, face-to-face first, and state why you're upset, come up with a plan that you both can agree upon and implement, then implement that plan. And then after 2 weeks, if it's still not working out, then come back to me for help. And 9 times out of 10, once I do that, I don't have any problems. You know, they don't contact me again. So I'm
Yeah.
assuming the problem is solved. But I do that because at the beginning, I actually had a tenant who complained to me, and then I went and talked with the other guy, and then the other guy was like, "Why is the my roommate telling the landlord on me? Why is he, tattletaling on me and going behind my back, right?" So I realized, okay, why don't we start empowering them to solve these types of issues, and then that allows them to kind of, help run the house and maintain what's going on.
That's
The other
brilliant.
thing is having like a bunch of like a team in place. So having some contractors that you can rely on and trust in place in case something were to break down. It's very important to have that to create a system for yourself.
That's awesome. And that's brilliant as well too, because if somebody feels like they tattletold on them, I imagine that just builds more conflict and more
Guys.
aminosity versus having them resolve the problem. Let me ask you this. I heard, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard that a lot of the colleges were closed during housing, a lot of the universities. Were you impacted at all
Oh yeah.
during that?
Definitely. At the very beginning, I was afraid, okay, what's going to happen? Because a lot of the tenants reached out to me and said, hey, I want to cancel my lease. It's, all online this year, apparently. So I was freaking out, right? Obviously, when I heard that, like, am I going to have to pay like $11,000 per month in mortgage, expenses on my own, right? So what I did is a couple things. First, obviously, I was very upset, and then eventually got over myself. And then the first thing I did was I started reaching out to the current tenants, and I asked them, "Hey, if I give you like $100 discount, are you okay staying? It's still a great place to kind of focus and study along with your classmates, right? And back at home with your parents, it might be a little bit harder to focus on your schooling, right? So, some of them, I would say at least half of them were like, yeah, sure, I'll stay. Because they just wanted to stay with their friends or
Yeah.
whatever, right, and study there and have a nice study environment. But the other half, I had to actually do a little bit more pushing. So I had to do more advertising. I advertised in more places more frequently. I also got on a call with each tenant who was interested individually and say, okay, what are your concerns? What's your budget like? and having that personal touch basically allowed me to reach, like pick me, or allowed them to pick me versus the others who might not have reached out directly and got on a call with them, because they realize like, okay, this landlord does care about me, and he's a actual human being. He's not some property management company, right? So I actually ended up filling all my bedrooms. At the time, my normal rent was like $10,755 per month. And instead, I was able to get $9,300 per month. So I lost like maybe $1,000 per month, but I was able to fill all the vacancies, all 23 bedrooms. And, the more important thing is I had a significant cash flow still.
That's awesome, man. So basically, it required being proactive about it and then communicating with the people, which is the same thing that we did for our tenants. We were proactive about it, reached out to them versus waiting for them to reach out to us. And that being proactive about it a lot of times makes it so that you're not anxious for 2 to 3 months wondering what they're thinking. You're actually communicating with them, which is great. Okay, good. How did you buy the second property? Like the second one, was that another property where you rented out as well too? And does that mean that you were living at home? Because I lived at home. I had 3 rental properties, and I was living at home. When I bought my fourth one, that's when I ended up moving out.
Yeah.
And I like sometimes people live at home, but they're not buying anything. They're just kind of pissing the money away. So, were you living at home at that time and buying rentals? Was that the strategy at first?
Yeah, it's like no shame, right? Honestly, yeah, that's when I started out. Yeah, I was still living with my parents. I had a good relationship with them. I also, my work was very close by to my parents' place, so I was like, yeah, why not? I could save a lot of money by doing this, right? And it just made a lot of sense to basically save a lot of rent money while I built up my assets on the side. And then eventually, I went into basically doing a house hack where I'm living for free, and then the renters are paying the mortgage. But at the beginning, it made a lot of sense for me just to live
I
with
did
my
the same
parents.
thing, man.
No
No
shame,
shame
right?
whatsoever. And I had a
Smart.
great relationship with my parents. And I just,
Yeah.
by the time I moved out, I think I probably had maybe like 4 or 5 thousand of positive cash flow. So
Nice.
that paid for like my entire mortgage of the property I moved into. So
Right.
it was really taking advantage, and thanks to my parents for helping out with that. The first 5 were house hacks, and then or the first 5 were rentals, and then the sixth one was when you moved out finally, right?
Basically,
Good
yes.
for you, man. Congratulations on that. Okay, good. And then where are you investing in, man? Like I know that you said that you look for top tier schools. Are they all
Mhm.
in one area or are they in different
Yeah,
markets?
so they're in like Sacramento and Stockton. So I actually invest at a Sac State area, CSU Sacramento, and I also invest near University of the Pacific. So that's where my rentals are located. I always try to buy within like a 5 minute walk or a 5 minute drive to campus. For some campuses, they're a little bit harder to access by walking. Like there might be like a river on the north side or a freeway or something like that. In that case, most students will probably drive to campus or they'll stay on campus, right?
Mhm.
For those ones, the 5 minute drive away is perfect, right? For ones that have neighborhoods that are directly abutting the campus that are walkable distance to campus, it's usually a good idea to buy in one of those neighborhoods that is walkable to campus, because then you could charge an even higher, like a prime rental rate, basically.
That's awesome. That was going to be my next question. I was going to ask you, like, what do you look for in a rental property? Is it just location in terms of proximity to the university, or are there other qualities? Like, are you looking for a single family? Are you looking for something with no HOA? Are you looking for a certain type of square footage, certain types of bedroom and bathroom mix?
Yeah, that's a very good question. For sure, number one criteria is always location.
Mhm.
And I think that's always going to be true in real estate. I try to stay, again, within a 5 to 7 minute drive of campus, maximum, again, 7 minutes. That's just because that's where the demand is. A lot of students, when they're waking up for the 8 a.m. classes, they want to wake up as late as possible and have the shortest commute as possible, right? That's just how students think, right? So location's number one, but a couple other things I look for is you mentioned square footage, and that's really important for me because every single bedroom that I can add, if I can turn like a 3 bedroom house into a 5 or 6 bedroom house, I essentially double or triple my rental income again. So it's really important. I look for houses that are like 1,500 square foot or more, because if it's over like 1,500 or more square foot, usually you can make that into a 5 bedroom house, depending on the layout of the house. It also has to have at least 2 shared bathrooms. The reason for that is I don't want to have like 4 tenants sharing one bathroom. The max I'll go is like a 3-to-1 ratio, 3 tenants to share one bathroom. The other thing I look for is general condition and age of the property. My very first property I bought was 100 years old, and it had so many issues with it. I've lost, I would say, over $30,000 on it, just in like the sewage line repair, having to put in a new HVAC, and there's just a lot of just problems that came up with it. Even the water heater, right, broke down. So I generally stay away from older houses nowadays, or I'll look for, if it is an old house, especially like neighborhoods like San Francisco, for instance, all the houses will be old. If it is an older house, did they at least replace a lot of the key parts like the roof or the HVAC, water heater, all that type of stuff, sewage line, what condition is that in? So I learned to, do my due diligence in terms of the home inspection, sewage inspections, and all of that. The other thing I would say is, yeah, like what condition is it in? Like, am I going to have to replace all the flooring, all of the appliances, that type of stuff, or does it come in pretty much move in ready?
What do you consider old? Like I know 100 years is really old, but like would you
Yeah.
consider like a 1960s old,
No,
1950?
I went. So most of my houses, I would say my cutoff is kind of like 1940
Okay.
or older.
Yeah.
Older than that, I usually have problems. So yeah, 1940 or more, I would say is totally fine. Most of the materials they used to construct homes during that time period are, they last a good amount of time versus the ones in like the 20s and the 30s. It just seems like there's so many more issues that kind of come up with those.
Yeah. Now, I know that you said that you'll take a house with extra square footage and maybe you'll add a bedroom or two.
Mhm.
Um, what areas are you looking for? Like I had somebody who told me that they look for like an extra living room or a loft area. Is that the type of areas that you're looking at, or what do
Yeah.
you look?
Exactly. So those are some great areas to add bedrooms. Either if there's like an unfinished basement or something, you could put in a bedroom there. But a lot of times I kind of look for the low hanging fruit. So if there's a family room and a living room, a lot of students only need one living area slash dining area, right? If you think about students when they stay at the dormitories, they're bunking with somebody and all they get is like a bathroom. They don't even get a kitchen, a garage, or backyard, or any of that stuff, right? So most students actually only need one common area. And so if there's extra, like there's like an extra office, library, or family room, I'll just basically put in bedroom furniture for that room and then call it a bedroom, right? The other thing I could do is if the living room is a very large living room, sometimes I'll divide that in half. I actually did that, I think, on 3 of my properties. I divided the living room in half, and half of it became the bedroom, and then half of it was like the dining common space area, just because, such a large space already.
Yeah. How did the idea cross your mind as it relates to um, house hacking and student rentals? I know that you said that I think you saw a friend, but before you actually did it, did he kind of mentor you through the process? Did you read some books? Did you listen to some podcasts? What was that like?
So the friend gave me the idea, but I basically took it from there. I kind of discovered this along the way, the best way to optimize everything and save expenses. What are some of the, ways to basically do these renovations in a very cost-effective manner, that type of stuff. It just kind of was just through trial and error, honestly. And like I said, I did lose quite a bit of money, over $30,000. But those were lessons that saved me like hundreds of thousands in the future, right? And right now, again, my portfolio brings in multiple six figures, so it's totally well worth it in the end.
Yeah. Are you doing anything with like Airbnb or like short-term rentals at all? And have you ever considered that versus the student housing?
Yeah, so for Airbnb, I feel like it's a little bit too much maintenance for me. Right now, it's nice because all my tenants are 1 year leases. So basically, once they sign the lease, I don't have to worry about them for the next year, essentially. I mean, there's little things that come up here and there, like the dryer will break or the dishwasher will break, the fence will go down or something like that, and I'll have the contractors repair that. But for the most part, after they sign the lease and everything, it's pretty smooth sailing after that. Versus Airbnb, it's a lot more hands-on type stuff and a little bit more marketing involved too. And I'd rather not have to deal with that. But that's just me personally. I found a niche that works, and why not if you find something that works, why not just scale that? Copy it over and over. If you copy it, the same model over and over, it's so much easier to do the second, third, fourth, fifth time because you're just doing the same thing you did the first time, right? And so I found a model that worked and I just scaled it. But I do think our whole nation as a whole is kind of dealing with affordable housing issues and also lack of inventory, right? And I feel like we are kind of moving toward a little bit more co-living type situations where people are trying to save more money by living in the same house with other housemates. For instance, like the school that I invest in, they charge $1,200 to live on campus. And that person has to basically live in the same room as somebody else versus I'm only charging like 600 and they're getting more privacy. They get a backyard, a garage, they have a study area and all of that type of stuff, right?
Yeah. Do you have anybody that helps you with this besides the maintenance people? Like if something breaks, who does that call go to?
Yeah, so I basically forward that to the contractor. I'll call up the contractor when something like that happens. But there is some software I'm kind of playing with, like Tenant Cloud, where basically the tenants can actually put in the request for whatever is broken down, and then it'll send that message to the contractor, to the respective contractor, and then basically it's all automated process essentially. And the same thing for rent, like rent will come in, and then if the tenant pays late rent, it'll automatically send them a message, hey, your rent is late, you also owe $100 late fee or whatever your late fee is.
Okay. So looking to systemize it a little bit more
Mhm.
as well too. And then have you ever had like a tenant just like leave in the middle of the night or anything like that? Like just like, hey, look, I'm done with this.
So during COVID, I did have a lot of tenants that are like, oh, can I get out of the lease type of deal, right? I did have one tenant where he actually spoke to an attorney and then the attorney called me and I was like, oh my gosh, what's going on, right? And then basically she was like, yeah, I understand he's on a lease, but can we kind of come some slack? So basically I let them go. We compromised and I let them go like a month early or so.
Mhm.
And then she drafted the contract. I read it over and just sent it back and everything. But that's the only time I would say I actually had to do that. Most times, if somebody wants to go early, they tell me, and then I'll say, okay, I'm going to help you try to find a subletter, but it is your personal responsibility to find somebody who will sublet under you. And usually they can find somebody. Like during summer, for instance, a lot of summer school students come in and, if they're not taking summer school themselves, they'll just go ahead and find a subletter who needs the place during summer school.
How do you rent out the rooms? Like, does the master rent for more? Do the other rooms rent for less? Can you give us an example of maybe one of your properties?
Oh yeah, definitely. So one thing I actually look for is couples for the master bedrooms or the larger bedrooms. If I could put in a couple, I usually charge about 30% extra. So let's say, it's normally $1,000 to rent that room. Then I'll charge 1,300 instead to put the couple in there. So I'll try to do that as much as possible. But again, I'll try to still maintain the 3-to-1 bedroom to bathroom ratio and not go over that. And then as far as ranges, I usually have a range of about $100 to $150, meaning the lowest the lowest costing bedroom will be like $100 or $150 less than the highest costing bedroom. So my range might be from anywhere from like 590 to like 700 or 720. For Sacramento area, it's more like I would say 810 to my highest is 1160 for a couple.
How do you determine which one is the lowest paying bedroom?
Square footage,
Mhm.
that's the biggest thing. Square footage, if they have a closet, most rooms will have a closet. Um, I guess, yeah, if they're again, if they're we're putting in a couple or something like that, but it's mostly based off of square footage. Oh, and private bathroom if they have that. Sometimes I have like two houses that have a private bathroom, so that room will pay a little bit extra.
You mind me asking if, like, I know the master, there's like a 30% rule for a couple. Do you have like a rule of thumb for that? For like if it has a private bathroom?
Yeah, so I don't really have a rule of thumb for private bathroom. I would say if it does have a private bathroom, it would be near the higher end of the range for sure.
Yeah.
So it'll be more like 700 instead of 590, for instance.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And then how are you coming up with these numbers? Like, where are you running comps at?
Yeah, that's a great one. So I highly recommend like Facebook groups, Craigslist. Talking to students directly actually is one great method as well. It's called market research when you basically call up the student or you message them on Facebook and say, hey, where are students like looking in this area for off-campus housing? Is this a good neighborhood? What neighborhoods do I stay away from? And what would you charge? Basically, or what do you see people charging around that area? And then that will give you a lot of good insight.
It's funny, when I bought my first the big apartment, the 25 unit, I
Mhm.
went to the apartment next door and kind of found out what they were charging, and I found out that we were super low.
Yeah.
Just to confirm, I had already done some research. I just wanted to kind of confirm to see if that was really the case,
Yeah.
and it happened to be it. How do you finance your deals whenever you're buying? Because I know part of the conversation is
Mhm.
creative financing. So you mind
Yeah.
kind of sharing that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot of ways to be creative with real estate investing. And the next two properties, I'm actually going to be looking into more of like taking on partnerships and then owner financing some of the deals. For financing my current deals, the biggest two things I've done is one, the house hack, which you can put a very low down payment, again, 3 to 3.5% down payment, and basically have the tenants cover the mortgage. And then there's the HELOC method, where basically a HELOC or cash out refinance. There are two ways of taking out equity and liquidating it into cash on a house. And you can use that cash for a down payment. So if you can take out, $50,000 out of your HELOC, it's taxed at, let's say, a 5% interest, but then you use that as a 20% down payment on, another house that's like 400,000 or something like that. Then basically and let's say your cash on cash return is like 15 or 20% for that cash. Well, you're borrowing at a 5% and then you're making a 15 to 20% return. So it just makes sense to go ahead and do that. And that's what really builds wealth is these houses appreciate in price, and then now you have equity built up on it that you can take out and leverage further.
That's awesome. It's funny. I have a TikTok account, and sometimes I get people like, "Oh, you can't do that," or "That's not possible. There's no way to do it." Now, a house hack, just to clarify, is when you actually live in one of the units. What's the other one called, where you just rent to student housing? Is it just renting by the room to student housing?
Yeah, as far as like the loan,
Is
uh,
like a nickname or anything? Like house hack is almost like a term being
yeah, yeah,
used.
yeah. I haven't. It's like house hacking on steroids, right?
Yeah.
I don't have a specific term for that. I guess rent by the room, student housing. Yeah, yeah,
Perfect.
yeah.
We'll have to come up with an acronym. What
I
is
know,
the best
right?
deal that you ever bought?
Ooh, well, this one is actually one of the best. Like I said, if I moved out of this one and rented out my master for about 900, it would be making 4,500 in rental income, and the mortgage is only 2,300. So that's about 2,200 cash flow minus expenses after that. So maybe about 2,000 or $1,800 in cash flow on this house. So I would say it's one of my best ones because not only that, the appreciation is very good as well in this area in Sacramento. I think my house has already gone up already $50,000 and it's only been half a year. Just in general, appreciation in California is pretty crazy too. Most of my houses have gone an average of about $100,000 since I bought them.
Yep.
So I would say I've created at least $500,000 in just appreciation from just buying and holding on to my properties. And so that's another cool thing about real estate is you're using leverage to buy your properties. So let's say you bought a house for let's make it simple. Let's say we bought it for 500,000, right? And you put a 20% down payment. So you put $100,000 on the house. I'm using big numbers just to make it simple, but let's say the house goes up like 3% in appreciation, right? So that makes it $15,000 more, like 500,000, 3% of that's 15,000. Well, 15,000 on the $100,000 that you put in is actually a 15% return, 15,000 divided by 100,000. So you're not making a 3% return. You're actually making 3 times 5, which is a 15% return because you're using a 1 to 5 leverage, 20% down, which is 1 to 5. So that's how you grow your wealth so quickly through real estate. If your rental, like your property goes up 10% and you're putting 20% down, that's like 100% return. Or sorry, that's 50% return. If it goes up 20%, that's 100% return.
I know that you mentioned that your strategy is you buy one property a year. What was your grandfather's strategy, just out of curiosity?
He just tried to buy as many as he could, to be honest. He bought
Yeah.
like a set of 6 flats in San Francisco. So he actually got into multifamily right away. I actually, unfortunately, I didn't have time to kind of ask him how he did it personally. I just know that, he was very successful doing it. And I saw that this was a very legitimate, very powerful strategy. Eventually, he was able to sell that property for 3.6 million.
Wow.
And I think when he bought it was only a couple 100,000.
Good for him.
Yeah.
Where are you finding most of your deals? Are you finding them on the market, off the market?
So I have 2 that are off market, if I remember correctly. Basically, I went to a real estate agent who markets in the area. So he sends out like direct mail campaigns and asks, "Hey, are you thinking of selling your house?" That type of stuff. So he's able to find some buyers actually off market. And because I work with him very constantly for my properties, he already knows what I'm looking for. He knows I'm looking for like a 3-bed, 2-bath house with like 1,500 square foot or more, and that's very close to campus. So anything that meets those parameters, he basically will let me know before he offers it to the MLS. And he has an incentive to do that because if he puts it on the MLS, well, then if they get like a buyer's agent, then he has to split the commission versus if he's the seller and the buyer agent, he gets the full commission, right? So he will actually sell the house to me before he puts the property on the MLS. And he actually got me off-market listing for 340,000, and then like a month later, when it appraised, it was like 380,000 or so. Or like when I looked it up again later, it was like 380,000. So I just got $40,000 in equity just by buying a property that he offered to me first.
Good for you, man. Congratulations on that. Awesome. And then any piece of advice that you'd give somebody looking to get started in real estate?
Get started as soon as possible. The number one thing I would have done if I could go back was actually buy my first rental and house hack it while I was actually in college, because housing you have to realize it keeps up with inflation. So a $500,000 house now in 10 years, looking back, it's going to look like a $250,000 house. If inflation is at 4% per year times 10 years, that's a 40% reduction in the value of your cash. So that means like again, a $500,000 house now will look actually like a $250,000 house in 10 years. So you have to realize real estate is really a time game. You want to plant your seeds and kind of let them grow into trees, right? You don't want to wait to plant that seed and wait for the market to be correct and everything to be perfect. You want to buy your rentals, your assets as soon as possible. And as long as they cash flow, you just hold on to them. And if the market dips or whatever, you just hold on to them again. And then eventually it'll go back up. You have that cash flow every month. So you can reinvest that and allows you to scale that much quicker.
Yeah. What do you think about the real estate market? Some people are saying it's going to go up. Some people are saying it's going to crash. What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, my thoughts are honestly, it's kind of an inverse relationship between interest rates and values of the homes. So yes, if the home values go down, interest rates go up, but it's the same mortgage payment about, because if your interest rate goes up, but your value of the home goes down, your mortgage pretty much kind of equalizes out. So you have to realize that it's never going to be perfect. It's best to just make sure you have that cash flow right now. And there's plenty of deals out there right now. Like I purchased 2 properties during the pandemic in 2021. I think it was both of them in 2021. And it was in the midst of the pandemic. Prices, we all know the housing market was very crazy, very hot. People were offering cash and stuff like 100,000 over asking price, but I was still able to find deals that cash flowed very well. In fact, this one I just bought in October. I closed on it in October of last year. And it was a very crazy market then still. So I would say don't wait to get started. It doesn't really matter how hot the market is. You shouldn't wait to invest in real estate.
There's a saying. There's a saying that goes, "Don't wait to buy real estate. Buy real estate and wait."
Exactly.
Basically.
Yes.
Yeah.
Perfect. Cool. That's the point. Yes.
Do you see yourself doing student housing rental forever? Or do you ever see yourself jumping into other items like multi-unit, self-storage, mobile home parks, or anything like that?
Yeah, self-storage actually was a big interest of mine for sure, because that's like very low maintenance, right? If someone doesn't pay their rent, you just move the storage items out of the place, right? So eventually I want to get to a place where it's like very, very, very automated. Like everything I own is all managed remotely, and I don't really have to do anything from my end. I train my team. I show them how, we are to manage these properties. And then basically I can kind of do hands off after that. Right now it's pretty much hands off, but when I get bigger and bigger, when I reach that scale, I want to have a team that can manage everything. So that's kind of where I see myself going. Yeah. Either more student rentals plus storage units, or maybe even some commercial type properties, like maybe like a Walgreens or a Wells Fargo, where you buy it and you don't have to worry about them not being able to pay the rent.
Some sort of like triple net property.
Basically. Triple net lease. Exactly. Yeah.
Good for you, man. Cool. What drives you?
Honestly, I would say, so I got into pharmacy originally because I wanted to help people. And it's the same thing for real estate. I found a niche where I can help everyone out, right? Student housing saves students a lot of money because they're paying half the amount for their room and board, right? Compared to staying on campus. So we're cutting down student loans by a lot. And that's a huge, the student debt crisis is very big right now. So that would really appeal to me. Also, I'm able to provide jobs to my, handyman and contractors. I love working with people as well. And then I love giving back as well. I love giving back the wealth. Actually, one of my goals is to eventually be able to donate $100,000 a year toward charities and, research, medical research that I, really support eventually.
That's awesome. Man.
Yeah,
good for you.
Basically just kind of living a more fulfilling life, being able to do what I want to do, where I want to do it, with whom I want to do it, basically living life on my own terms is how they say it. Right.
That's awesome. Congratulations. Any last final message to the viewers?
No, but anybody who's interested in getting started in student housing, I do have like a free PDF guide that you can use. So it's at www.newbierealestateinvesting.com/guide. That's www.newbierealestateinvesting.com, and newbie is spelled NEWBIE. And I also, on my newsletter, if you sign up for that, I provide strategies that I'm using, what my journey is looking like, what I'm going through, and how I'm solving a lot of problems that come up in real estate investing.
That's awesome. Well, I wanted to say thank you for coming on the show. This is Ryan Chaw, a real estate investor out of Sacramento, California. For our viewers, this was episode number 100. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to continue seeing more of our episodes, make sure to hit that subscribe button. If you feel that this episode will help out a friend, family, neighbor, somebody that you know, make sure to hit that share button and send them the link. Once again, everybody, Jose Luis Morales, episode number 100 of the Residual Real Estate Agent Show. Thank you so much, and stay tuned for the next episode. Make it a great day. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks again for the invite.